Hello there, welcome to part 13 of You're Being Shaped, a series of videos I'm doing about Vance Packard's book The People Shapers. And I was going on in this, in my last video about the idea of merging man with computer. This is what Vance Packard's discussing here. Let's read on. Here it reads, the computer is part of the brain. Here it says, the 1976 meeting of the American Association for Advancement of Science had, as mentioned at the beginning of the chapter, a session on the possibility of incorporating a memory-enhancing computer into the brain. It was described as a fascinating session. A compact computer would serve as a booster to the brain of man. It would be tuned into the brain's own electrochemical language and would both receive and send out information. And this definitely connects to the microchip in the brain, doesn't it? Which I've been speaking about. And also, I was thinking synthetic telepathy as well, either via the computer to the human brain. And that's what they call voice-to-skull technology. You can, or via a person to person. So, or chip to chip. If everybody had a chip in their brain, one could communicate to your somebody you know in voice-to-skull, meaning straight in the mind, basically. So, so that's what I mean when I say synthetic telepathy. Maybe a lot of people find that appealing. I don't, but it's very interesting. And also, it spoke of education as well, using this, for education. Education really is it is it really education when you're just memorising information, not actually thinking. So, if that's the case, then it would be worse using this kind of technology, wouldn't it, for indoctrinating people. Let's read on though. As projected, it would help the mind function faster and greatly expand the brain's capacity for reliable memory. Yeah, so more on the brain chip. The temptation could be so many things. It could be for people with Alzheimer's, improving their memory. People with poor IQs, it can expand their IQ. And other kind of gifts it could give you. It can be really advertised to be made appealing, couldn't it? So reading on, the goal, Reed said, this is chap we're talking about, would be a tie-up of mind and computer that will have the information right in your head instantly. Whenever you think you want to know something, the computer in the head would become a natural part of the person's brain. And the other thing to throw in that is virtual reality, which I mentioned. That could be a real law, and you could not only could people be viewing the same virtual reality as a simulation, you can participate in it. You could actually, this is already kind of going on now, isn't it? But it's such an advanced level. Not only could you have synthetic telepathy, you could directly interact virtually with your partner or people you know. So there's, it goes deep, doesn't it? Reed was questioned about the possible abuses that might arise from such a mind-computer marriage under a totalitarian regime. Would it open up possibilities for thought control, which is what I've been kind of talking about? Indoctrination, yep. Then we had the education thing. Even memory tapping. Reed dismissed these speculations. Yeah. Makes you wonder, thinking of thought control, how on a daily basis, as I've said before, we our minds are owned with this invisible Wi-Fi all around us. decisions do we make? It's like a step ahead of television, isn't it? You know, they say that most people are influenced subconsciously by television, by what they see visually, because it's parts of the brain they know for a fact that reacts to certain colours, symbols, and the television's kind of dreamlike, isn't it? In a way, it's kind of a almost like a virtual reality itself. So, you know, that's enough. But we have you know, electromagnetic frequencies bombarding our own electromagnetic frequencies in it, you know, via our brain. Then it's far more effective for controlling people than television. So let's read on here on what Reed's discussing here, or Vance Packard, or both. It says here, on the other hand, a populace, even under a dictator, probably would not put up with any universal program to put computers in their heads. Almost certainly they would not permit it unless it was done under the promise of brain enhancement, which is kind of what we're talking about. Reed said that a brain-computer hookup would be a great thing to have as long as it was under one's own personal control. And then this is the issue, isn't it? Would it be? Would it ever be? As a practical manner, the cost of constructing and implanting the computers, if they are ever perfected, would be so high that only the rich or the government could afford them. Well, I disagree, I think, because as technology has become perfected, computers have grown cheaper and cheaper. Well, I heard microchips are so cheap now to mass produce compared to what they were. So, you know, I disagree with that. Reading on, the computer link-up would be made after birth, not before. Presumably, its installation would require the consent of the wearer, who would also have the option of deciding when he wanted it removed. If computers that feed the mind ever become widely available, they could conceivably contribute to the serious depersonalization of man that we are already witnessing. Individuality might suffer because of problems of evaluation. Professors wouldn't know if they were grading a man or a machine. That's a good point there. In this section we go into head transplants. I'm not going to go into this much, but it's just amazing, you know, what's already being done, isn't it, really? Yeah, they were talking about brain transplants, basically, but the scientists here said that the most effective way is just transferring a head and they onto another subject, and they were using monkeys, small monkeys first, and then chimpanzees, and they were hooking their brains up to blood machines as well to keep them alive, and the brains were actually alive. So that's kind of frightening. It reminds me, I was going to say, it reminds me of RoboCop. I think it's the second RoboCop, when there was they had a guy who was a drug addict. He was a big drug dealer, and he was killed. And then they used him as an experiment, but they just used his brain and they put it in a kind of a preservation kind of liquid, and then he was just brain, and then the rest of him was machine. But his brain was still addicted to the drug, so he was going after it. But yeah, just made me think of that. I don't know why. It also makes you wonder if these experiments have already been done underground on human beings, and it wouldn't surprise me, as I said before. We're heading towards the end of this now, and it was kind of a bit drawn out, wasn't it? But yeah, the last section here, the title, Towards a More Robust Man, and just a kind of, I guess it's a final food for thought, as they say. So let's just read a little bit of this. The technologists for behaviour control and for manipulating the beginning and end of life have produced some happy results, as I have discussed in previous chapters. but on the whole they add up to regress rather than progress. And just as noted, many people are searching in a variety of ways to prove that the individual still counts and can be self-directing. That's a good point. But here he says, to recapture, let us list the kinds of manipulations of man that scientists have succeeded in making or are trying to make. The manipulation of behaviour according to scientifically precise methods. The manipulation of moods. The radical manipulation of human reproduction. The manipulation of personality. The manipulation of the brain and its functions. The manipulation of genetic traits. The manipulation of longevity and human body parts. The manipulation of situations in which we make decisions. The manipulation that deprives us of privacy. The manipulation of uniqueness of the human species. Yeah, so these are really important ideas, and that we need to discuss, because as I was saying, the lots of this is becoming a reality. So that's the end of Vance Packard's The People's Chauffeurs. And if you watched it, thanks for watching. In the next video, I'm just going to do a video for final thoughts and ideas, like I did in the last video with Julian and Aldous Huxley's books. So I'll hopefully see you then.